G'day, guys.
Hello.
Well, we ready to get going?
Yes, it's time, so why not?
Yeah, I'm hoping not for a long one tonight. I've had a big, long week. The last 7 days have been horrible.
You too.
Just lot of work, Peter. Just trying to keep on top of things. And I think, I can see Ryan Winfield there, and I think most people are aware at the moment things are as busy as all hell out there. And I just went down to Adelaide week before last, Perth last week, talking about protection of trees and development sites. So that's sort of taken out of my time.
Yeah.
So share my screen, and yeah, you guys should be able to see that. That's great. So first thing I'm going to address is the email correspondence, and I think some of that will be quite interesting. Oh, okay. It's really interesting. Okay. First one I've got is one from Peter Gray, who raises some questions that had me go to my brains trust. And Peter felt very pleased that he was able to stop me. And that is, what's happening here between the plants and the macadamias, and why, when things are pruned back to the macadamia or cleared back, the macadamias take off. And the question was, is this the result of allelopathy, or is this the result of competition, or what is it the result of? So in a conversation with Peter, I started to go through some of the literature. I did find some allelochemicals produced by a number of our grasses. And then I thought I'll talk to Adam Tom. Adam Tom did his postgraduate work in allelopathy, particularly on Cinnamonum camphora. And the first question that I asked Adam is, what is the situation here? Are we talking about competition? We're talking about allelochemicals, and his first response was, it's unlikely that the allelochemicals are going to be at levels that are going to be significant in terms of impact on the plant. So although grasses produce some allelochemicals, is not generally going to be in high numbers. Now, that's a nice broad stroke, so there'll probably be some occasions where they are. But the two things that were interesting was the fibrous root mass in the first 5 centimeters or 6 centimeters of soil is just so high in grasses that it almost eliminates all root activity from trees. So particularly the trees and the grass are growing at the same time. And so his comment was that it's competition for both water and solutes. If water is adequate, the solutes are still an issue. They're still a limiting factor. If solutes are compensated for by fertilization, then water, and if you use water and fertilization, then usually the turf grass is less problematic. But the turf grasses are high in protozoal content, and trees in general prefer a fungal content, and those two are antagonistic towards each other. So we then discussed what we do about it, and the answer is macadamia production, for example, Peter, and you would have seen this. You've got a metre or more wide strip of just barren dirt on either side of the trunk, and they have this green patch down the middle, and then a barren area. That barren area is better for the tree. No covering at all is better for the tree than turf grass up to the base of it. And that's a common thing in fruit production in general, where they'll spray around the trees and then continue along a continuous strip, as opposed to having grass grow and just manage a small little area. Mulch was considered to be desirable and preferable. And again, same comment on mulch. 5 to 10 centimeters is usually adequate. You can go up to 20 centimeters, but don't mound it. Don't volcano mulch. And the reason we don't volcano mulch is we get lots of roots growing into that mulch zone. When it dries off, they dry off. So you end up with very little benefit from that process. So it's better off being an even layer of mulch rather than a tapering layer of mulch. And an even layer of mulch that is maintained. So that was the answer on that one, Peter, and it seems like that was a reasonable argument. Now, is there anything to the contrary? The answer is probably. If someone wants to go do some Google Scholar searching, I'm sure you'll find a little bit more about the impacts of turf grass and trees, but it's consistent with what I learned. So I'm content with that. That doesn't mean there's not an impact from the Lilo chemicals. It just means it's going to be fairly minor in comparison with competition. And so I was happy with that, Peter.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I'm particularly interested in the 1/2/3 photo that shows a new flush of growth. So I've been watching these trees. This is not a normal commercial orchard. So as you said, in a commercial orchard, they make sure that they spray the grass off, and whether that's, you know, keep it completely bare or something less than that, but they do normally spray the grass off, and those orchards have, you know, normal growth rates. So a tree of this age would be twice the size of a, you know, sort of like already to be 10 meters tall. But yeah, you can see here where this tree and the fourth photo shows the tiny little bit of grass that's been sprayed around the base, so barely a meter across, and already you can see the tree's flushed, and that's, you know, quite a hefty, healthy flush. And as I say, I drive past these trees. I've been watching them for years. This is the first time they've ever had a flush like that.
Yeah, and I think that's you had some very wet periods last year or year before, didn't you?
Yeah, it's been the seasonal conditions. We haven't had a bad drought for a while.
Yeah, and the wet period can be just as problematic for plant growth for two reasons. One is the root system, when the soil starts to approach saturation, will start to inhibit water uptake. So that's that production or gating of the aquaporins, or the chemical that is responsible for water transport into the cytosol. And so that's one half of the equation. And the other half of the equation is photosynthesis is reduced when things are wet. So that really bad year you had in Lismore, not last year, but the year before, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That would have had a real strong negative effect on the trees as well. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes in the longer term. But yes, look, the bottom line is we really should be encouraging 1 meter or 2 meters all the way around trees to be clear of grass as far as possible. And I was just down doing a survey at a site this afternoon, my last site, and the difference between a tree and a garden bed, they're all Waterhausia floribunda, and the trees in the turf grass was almost a doubling in the biomass of the tree in the garden bed, maybe more. Let me just pull up a calculator and we'll do that and see.
There's an example of that in Northcote in Melbourne too, Mark.
Sorry?
There's an example of that happening in a park in Northcote as well, here in Melbourne.
Yeah, look, it's
plane trees planted with grass around them, and then they've got ones planted in a garden bed, and they're like twice the size.
Yeah. So I can just do them from basic memory. 20 centimeter diameter tree, we had 177 and then 31. Yeah, almost 3 times the biomass from being in the garden bed. I mean, that's a pretty amazing change. And the garden bed had other woody, small hedged woody plants, you know, some clissamins and things like that, but it had lots of mulch, lots of surface area, lots of room for water infiltration into the soil. We talk about what Peter was just talking about. It rains. That first 5 centimeters of soil, and that was from a paper from ISA, and I'll pull that up so you can see what that paper was called. That first 5 centimeters is almost dominated exclusively by turf grass when turf grass is present. Where am I going to go for that? So it won't be in, it'll be in here. Downloads. I think that's the article. Yeah, that's it. So as a master's dissertation, evaluation of competition between turf grass and trees. And then there was a second one. I think this is from the journal. Yep. And this one is effects of turf grass and mulch on the establishment and growth of bare root sugar maple. So again, whilst it only looked at one species and one situation, it still gives you enough to start saying, yes, we probably should be, as far as possible when it comes to tree health, suggesting there's an advantage in just a small mulched area around the trees. And when I say small mulched area, 1 metre to 2 metre radius. Not something insignificant.
What would your recommendation be for tube stock, Mark? How big? Same size, or?
No, you could get away with a lot less with tube stock. You'd probably get away with, maybe 500 mils across total.
Yep.
And then I'd mulch that as far as possible again.
Yeah.
The beauty of mulching it is that it not only, keeps moisture in it, but it also reduces the growth of new grass, new competition. So you sort of get a win-win.
It means when you go to spray, you're less likely to hit the trunk. And when you're talking about plants, so things like glyphosate, which is the most common herbicide we'll use, glyphosate is absorbed by parenchyma cells and or parenchyma cells. Parenchyma cells are the living cells, and they're in high density in thin bark and exposure. So, it's not uncommon. And in fact, I just looked at some roses, unfortunately, some heritage roses, and one of my staff had been spraying this in her own gardens and has clipped just a little bit of the stem and got a little bit of glyphosate on, enough to kill off one stem and kill off 2 roses. So it just, the more mulch you have down, the greater barrier you have. Definitely of some effect. So there we are. There's and for those of you who don't know Gary, he's at Moreton Arboretum, brilliant researcher when it comes to roots, and trees from an arboriculture perspective. Gary's one of the greatest experts that we have. So that's that one. Next question was, now whose is this one?
Yeah, that's my questions.
They're your questions? Okay.
Yeah.
We've got a eucalyptus. I mean, I don't know what it is, but it looks like turtle in the base.
I did have some text in there as well. I don't know what happened, but that's a Lecoxylon.
Lecoxylon, okay, that makes sense.
Western Vic.
And let me see if I can make it a bit bigger for the others. I should be able to. I was able to previously. Because it's reviewing it. No. Okay. I don't think I can make that bigger. So we've got a basal wound, yeah? We've got a little bit of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pupation galleries. So
there's a couple of holes in it, yeah.
Yep. So they're oval holes. Looks like it's a phoracantha that's done at a longicorn beetle.
Yep.
And they're an oval hole rather than a D-shaped hole, and they're hard to pick the difference between on occasions. And, it takes a fair bit to get your eye in on that. But they've gone, they're finished, and the tree's dealing with things reasonably well. It's producing some woundwood. It's close to a 1/3 circumference injury by the looks of it.
Yeah. So do
And
you reckon there isn't some sort of impact have happened at some stage, or I was
hard to
thinking,
say what did something, but these guys, these phloem feeding phoracanthus, tend to be looking for trees that have some level of stress, and they're called longicorn beetles. It's a bastardization of longhorned, which refers to long antennae. And if you remember, the antennae are used for smelling. They're olfactory in their purpose. So long antennae are good at picking up these smells of a stress tree. That is, it picks up the chemical difference that's going on. It says, oh, look, there's a spot that's got a problem. It might be a nick, it might be a hit, it might be a root injury. It could simply be stress. So hard to know which comes first, the chicken or the egg. But these guys are taking advantage because there is something that's caused that to happen, and they've picked it up.
yeah. Well, I wasn't sure if it was some sort of root rot or something as well, but yeah,
there is definitely root rot all the way from here to here, because that's all dead. And when stuff dies, it decays, and that's why we say we can have a 1/3 basal cavity. So we're not got the cavity yet, but we've lost all of that material, and all of this in contact with the ground will rot based on the durability of the timber.
Yeah.
The more durable timber, the longer that'll take. The less durable, the less period that'll take. If that was a willow, for example, or a poplar, Populus nigra italica, you'd probably be able to put your probe already in there, because this looks like it's been 2 or 3 years ago. Leucoxylin, you're probably going to get maybe 5 or 10 years before you see some form of basal decay. And by then, the tree is going to be another, 10, 15, 20% wider. And so, again, we just tend to ignore these things, provided that they're, in general, less than about. So not precise. Don't go and say, oh, it's 1/3 of it, but say this is a time we need to think about what's going on.
Because the tree is really healthy as well, like not a bit of deadwood in the canopy. And
trees have to have a huge amount of redundancy in them. If they didn't, they wouldn't survive. So over specification is how they do it. So, for example, we talk about trees having somewhere between 4 and 5 times safety factor before they start to adapt and start producing adaptive growth. That means that many of them, like, for example, a fig might have a safety factor of 30 to 1, and 30 to 1 is just phenomenal. It's, again, not going to stimulate in until it gets down to that 4 or 5, and that's when we start to see the adaptive growth occur. So just because you're not seeing adaptive growth doesn't mean that it's not getting stronger. It's that potentially this has already got way more strength than it needs. And I'm guessing that on size is probably 50 centimeters, something like that.
It's a pretty big tree, so probably about that.
So 50 centimeter diameter telegraph pole in the ground, who'd be worried about that rotting away in 10 years?
If you drove your 4-wheel drive into it, you'd probably be more likely to die than the tree.
And it's interesting. I was just talking about that today with Jessica in my office, and I said she was talking about bad accidents because I went past one that wasn't bad, but it was bad enough. And I said, I saw some photographs a few years ago of a guy who hit a tree at 160 kilometers an hour. The tree stayed up, and the car was just shrapnel. It's the easiest way you could describe it. It was probably 40 or 50 pieces. So yes, it's got lots more strength than it needs. So at this stage, we're not seeing a lot of adaptive growth. We may do in time. We may see this sort of start to swell out and get bigger, but we need to lose a lot of strength first.
Yep.
That's that portion of it. This is the top side of a branch. You've got an injury. First thing, I can't see it from the ground. So, maybe we should be climbing in, inspecting every tree and making millions and billions of dollars as an industry. But in reality, you can't. It has cracked. So it has been loaded. But again, the tree is attempting to deal with it and address this. Will it always succeed? No. But this is why you need to look at failures when they occur to see whether this has been a pre-existing issue, these sort of things. And you do pick these things up when they fall.
Because that's obviously been there for a long time.
Yeah. And it's more than conceivable, because I've got samples that demonstrate they can, in time completely occlude over and just encapsulate the injury.
It's on its way towards that.
And this new
Doing a
tissue
good job.
in particular is incredibly strong. So whilst it's losing strength here, it really hasn't got to the stage yet where it's got to failure.
Yeah.
If I saw that in a tree, I'd either look at doing removal if it was a redundant piece, not particularly important, or reduction prune if it was something that was important. And if I'm talking about reduction, I'm talking small cuts as far out towards the end as I can, because I want to remove as little of the canopy as possible, because the canopy is what's going to give me the increase in thickness. All I want you to do is a bit of the end load and the length to reduce the wind load on that issue. So it's
if you cut that specific branch back, will that reduce the flow of nutrients into that branch, or like will that slow down the wound wood?
It does slightly, which is why I'm saying you want to make small cuts when you're doing the reduction on something like that. What sort of tree was it? Do you know?
That's a spotted gum.
Yeah. Okay. They're great trees. They really are. It's such a durable wood. Okay.
There's a video as well. I don't know if
I've got the video there. Yeah. Is that same tree? Is it?
Yeah. No, that's that creature there. Oh bugger.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll get it going. Going to open up the video for you.
Oh well, I haven't seen that video player in a while. Got a Mac.
This is a false scorpion. It's nice, isn't it? It's great.
I'd literally just snapped that bit of deadwood off, and this thing came out.
Yeah, so it was just habitat. And this is this issue we talk about of, feel like we've got to go through and remove, and that's a great little video of it. So it's a false scorpion, and they do occur frequently in trees. So yeah, not my first one that I've seen. I don't know of anyone ever being hurt by one. They're certainly not fatal or anything.
What do they do up there? Just live up there?
Yeah, and predatory. It's like huntsman spiders. I mean, come across a huntsman spider in a tree.
You
know why they're in trees?
Get away from
nothing. They're in trees because trees are full of insects.
Yeah, true.
lots and lots of insects. We don't see most of them because they go through the chipper. But I'll just give you an idea, and I do have. I think I can get there fairly quickly. I can. I don't know whether I can do a double search, but I'm going to try again. If not, I'll just do a single and go back a number of years. Okay, so all of these images that you're seeing, thumbnails come up, these are all insects on one Corymbia maculata that have all come down because we've had a very hot day, and they just come down and they're in the shade of the trunk. And that's how I got them all. And they come down in the hundreds. Here are flies that are doing the same thing in the same conditions. And I've had that experience now a few dozen times. So all the grey backgrounds, all Corymbia maculata, and within millimeters of each other on occasions, even though they're enemies to each other. You can see here's for example, the wasp and the fly together. I could have collected that day 1,000 insects from the trunk of the tree if I wanted to. So it lets you realize that, trees are full of it in terms of insects. And again, this need for redundancy. If, a little bit of sap sucking, a little bit of boring of a little bit of anything were to kill them, we wouldn't have any trees. It's that they've got this ability to lose a reasonable proportion of what they got in order to survive. Happy with that?
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
It's okay. And I don't know that I'll just see if I can. I don't know that I've got a scorpion, full scorpion, but I'll just check. I do have one in the collection of photographs, but I don't know whether I've tagged it or whether Google can find it. Oh yeah, okay. This is your little guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mine was a bit fatter, but
yeah, yours is a bit healthier. Here's another one. That's healthy.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, same deal. They're up in trees and they're just essentially good guys. So
cool.
Neat to see though, isn't it?
Yeah, I was very surprised.
Trees aren't just trees. People say, oh, they've got a habitat value. I mean, if it's a tree, it's got a habitat value. If it's a dead tree, it's got a habitat value.
That was like a 25-year-old tree, so not very big or anything. But yes,
yeah,
you had lots of insects in it.
If you'd fogged it, you might have got 1,000 insects off it.
Yeah,
maybe 20 or 30 different genera from one tree, and it's hard to see that because we're always so busy rather than slowing it down to see what's there. And I'm forever amazed what you do find if you go hunting for them.
Yeah. Normally you just see bloody scales on the spotted gums and the sooty mold in the leaves.
Red gum psyllid, and there are a few other great guys on things. So that's that one. Now there's one other, and I'm just trying to find it, and that's the one that
One from Vicky, was it?
Vicky, yeah. I thought I'd put it into the folder. This is it.
Yeah.
Okay, Vicky, you sent these ones in.
Yep.
Okay, and we need your guidance on the questions.
Okay. This one is a development site, and basically when I've assessed all the drawings and everything, the main trunk will not survive the development. And my question is, can the tree survive if the main trunk and canopy are removed and the secondary trunk is retained? I went back a second time and did a bit of climbing up in there, and I'm pretty sure they're connected. So I'm pretty sure they're part of the one tree, but it was a bit difficult to climb. But yeah, I've assessed the development's been knocked back a couple of years ago, and they just wanted another independent assessment. But basically, the proposal is suspended driveway, garage with a 3-story structure underneath, lift, stairway, the whole shebang. And it's that main trunk and associated canopy won't survive. All the canopy associated with the main trunk looks like it's been grazed by, I think there's flying foxes in the area.
Possums.
Yeah, well, I thought maybe possums. Do you think it's possums?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the second trunk that's up in where the arrow is, all the canopy associated with that secondary trunk is all dense and good quality. And you can see there's another tree of the same species in the property behind, and the canopy is lovely and dense.
So let me ask you the first question. So they're going to need to cut through here in order to get the building in. Is that what the situation?
Yeah.
Oh, what would have happened? And this is just a question to see whether we can, if there was another tree growing here and they competed with each other for light, would that have died off or not even developed?
I don't know. The other arborist assessment was done maybe 3 years ago, and his comments were the same with the possum grazing and the canopy being quite partial.
Let me share one with you if I can and see what I go with there. I don't want to go through too much of this, but it's worthwhile at least looking at the few images here. So it catches up with me. Yeah. This is a fairly sparse looking tree. I think you'd agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Lophosma in front, ficus in the back. In order to build along this line, all of that has to get cut off. So that's the first stage. And I think that would be fairly heavy pruning by most standards.
Yeah.
And without going through all the rest, that's the tree several years later on the left-hand side. That's what it was like on the right-hand side. So I think just because you're pruning off a whole pile of stuff doesn't mean that a tree has to set backwards. There are lots of variables in it. And again, that's the tree after the development. This goes down a story and a half below.
Right.
So heavy root pruning, 2 times trunk diameter away. You know, I have a view, and it could be a view that's wrong, and it could be a view that upsets people, but I have a view that you're better off trying and failing than losing the tree. The question is, should you develop at all? And that's a different question. You know, I think it comes back to, if not there, then where? My daughter has a wonderful phrase, and that is, the problem's the boat people. They started coming in 1770 and we haven't stopped them since.
Yeah.
And, you know, the point of that is, if you're going to have a population, you're going to have some compromise. What we want to do is have trees and development occurring together, and that means we need to push limits.
Yeah. So my question is, should I get them to set it back, say, 3 meters away from that trunk? Or if they take all that trunk out and canopy, with the secondary trunk being up the hill, would that survive if they're connected?
I would consider pruning this off, giving yourself a setback from here, and then water and manage the remaining root system the best you can. That's what I would do.
Okay. Yeah.
I would have thought if you leave enough room to put the scaffold, most buildings need some sort of scaffolding.
Yeah, it's at least 1 meter, the scaffolding. Yeah.
So if you leave enough room to fit the scaffolding in, I think that you could put the building next to the scaffold, and that tree is not going to die from the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've spoken to a surveyor today who can do he can use LiDAR and do a 3D electronic model. And I thought that'd be the best way to design around it.
Yep, that's brilliant, Vicky. I think that's definitely worth doing. And the canopy is sparse enough that he'll get really good mapping on those lateral branches.
And what about root pruning, where they're going to put the building down the bottom? I mean, root mapping down the bottom.
Yeah, you know, it's really hard to find the roots, identify the roots, resolve the roots. My view of it is, again, on something like a ficus of that size, it's not a particularly big tree. It looks like what?
Yeah, it's about 12 meters tall.
How big's the trunk though? About 3 feet?
It's about just under 600.
Okay, it's a little bit bigger than it looks. Yeah, look, I would be surprised if anything at 3 meters would have any impact on it at all. And
okay,
I'd be surprised, as Peter says, if at 2 meters, it's still going to have, that's 2 meters is 3 times trunk diameter. And That's about as small as you'd want to go for a transplant of ficus. Incredibly tolerant species. Remember,
Yeah, okay.
this can start its life as an epiphyte.
Yeah, that's right. I think it'd be self-sown in that location.
So, you know,
Yeah.
the worst you're going to do is slow it down for a period of time. It's a species
Okay.
of maybe 600 or 700 years of growth if it has everything going right.
Mm.
So I would be inclined to try and push the limits and retain the tree. And my experience has been, to date, I don't think I've ever lost a fig as a result of root pruning.
Yeah, so it'd be a metre for the scaffolding and then set the building back another metre. So give it 2 metres.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Okay.
2 meters is 4 times trunk, just under 4 times trunk diameter, 3 times trunk diameter.
So I'd advise them to set it back from where the lean is to the right.
Yeah,
Where
to the
that
right.
junction is, yeah.
This reminds me, Vicky, this reminds me of I was the project arborist for a resort in Byron Bay. And I remember one day I got a call from the builders saying, "Oh, we want you to come and have a look at this fig tree. We've had to put some pipes in." So I went and had a look, and the tree was about 900 mil DBH, not in great shape. So it was salt burn, growing in sandy soil. It wasn't a fantastic specimen. And these guys had to put some pipes in the ground, so they excavated within 300 mil of the base of the trunk on 3 sides.
Wow.
3 sides. And there were all the pipes. And they said to me, "What do you think we should do?" And I looked at the lean of the tree, which was into a landscaped area. And I thought, well, even if it falls over, it's not going to do any harm. I said, let's just see what happens. Well, that tree's still there.
Okay.
It actually didn't blink, didn't shed any leaves, didn't do anything at all. It just tolerated it and grew on.
Yeah, look, I'm surprised at what trees do tolerate, and I'm just trying to open a similar one up. This is a fig in Ningen, and then again excavated on 3 sides, 1, 2, 3. These are tree motion sensors, so I got up there. We put a temporary brace in. You can see the cut, how close. This is 1 times trunk diameter.
Yeah.
Down about 400 to 500 on 3 sides. The tree motion sensor came back with low, so it hadn't been significantly destabilized, and that's because this is nice soil with good sinker roots, so it got all the stability. There's the temporary brace we put in just in case. Failure is more likely to go towards the cut side, not away from it, but that's just in case some freaky wind came up that wanted to peel it out towards the road, back to a phoenix palm all above head height. And we just had them loosen this off every few months, just give it a half turn on the turnbuckle so that this became progressively looser. And then that was it. So, there's the big bogan. Big bogan lives at Ningen, in case you're wondering. I thought he lived in the western suburbs of Sydney. So yes, it's the same experience. And then that tree didn't shed, didn't thin. I'm just forever amazed at what trees will tolerate. Now, that doesn't mean that that's what we want to be starting at. That means that where possible, we'll go for the optimum of 12 times trunk diameter. But we've got to weigh that up with the cost of real estate and the built form that people are wanting, the intended use. And so there will be times when we come closer. The counter side of that, Vicky, is if you do that, you will want to put some irrigation on. You will want to be inspecting the tree on a periodic basis. That's probably more frequent than if you were just at the 10 times trunk diameter away from the base, or even 5 times trunk diameter. You'd be less intensive. So the closer people want to get to trees, the more intensive our input's going to be.
So would you put a tree motion sensor on it? And
you could put a tree motion sensor on it if you're concerned. And the time to get concerned about that's when they're doing the excavation. Have a look what you see. And, I'm forever amazed at what you don't find in the way of roots. And, I don't consider 100 mil root to be a big problem in terms of stability in most cases.
I think it's important that the tree has an area where it can grow new roots to compensate for the lost roots. And I say that because one of my projects was to put a root barrier around a tree down the main street of Byron Bay, so very much in the public eye, and there was a public outcry against the idea of removing the tree, and we put a root barrier around the tree at about 3 meters. So this was entirely all the way around the tree. The tree was 700 mil odd dBH, and the first time we did it, we never got to cap the root barrier material properly, so the tree climbed out over the top of the barrier and just became really happy again. This time we capped it, so we've stopped it and kept it inside this tiny little, basically, pot, and the tree did go off. And so I got council to put some mulch around the tree, and it's picked up again. So it just showed to me that even though you can chop massive amounts of roots off, you still need to allow the tree to grow somewhere. And my experience is that those new roots grow quite quickly. So in a couple of years, it's sorted itself out and has got itself back to a reasonably stable condition again.
Okay, thank you.
And again, up on the screen at the moment, this is Ficus mycocarpa hilii, and I'm pretty comfortable that it's managed to break through the pot at the bottom. But, you know, it does give you the idea of how confined you can have trees be. And we all know the goldfish story. Everyone's quite happy with the goldfish story. You know, goldfish, the size of them is determined by their containers. Well, there are a whole pile of trees that are goldfish trees. That is, their growth rate is restrained by the volume of soil and the solutes in the water that they've got. And ficus are superb at it because, remember, again, they're happy to be epiphytes, and epiphytes in some cases for 30, 40, 50, 100 years before roots get to soil and take off again. You know, those figs that you see growing on the side of brick walls that, you know, the third and fourth story will take, you know, decades to hit ground level. And so they are simply controlled in their growth rate. And if you were to do a cross section of their stem, you'd find, instead of, you know, maybe a centimetre or more of new growth in a year, you might find 2 or 3 cells, and that's it. Early wood, late wood, maybe a growth increment, and that's about it. Whilst they work on getting the roots hitting the ground. So ficus is, in my mind, a perfect goldfish tree. That is, as long as it's got enough to survival, it will survive, but it will reduce its growth rate. And we know that. We know that whole system works because we call it bonsai.
Yeah.
You're going to cut off branches, you're going to cut off roots. And yes,
James Urban, in one of his books, has got an interesting graph that goes to the amount of soil volume that a tree needs. And I think my memory says that a tree with a DBH of about 400 mil needs 45 or so cubic meters of soil. And my understanding of what happens when you fill that up is that the tree kind of stops growing and just sort of sits and sulks after that.
Yeah, you created a pond. It's goldfish. And so there was a paper on this in 2011 that looked at fewer bigger growing trees in pavement areas and cities, gave a better canopy cover than lots of smaller trees. And that was one of the reasons why, Peter. You had greater resources spread over fewer trees. So yes. So that does that answer the question on that one now?
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah.
I you know, again, that doesn't mean that the consent authority has to say yes. You know, it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
It's, you know, but I don't think.
That's the view from the top of the street.
Yeah,
looking
this
at
is the
the
main
edge.
stem, and this is the
Yeah.
second stem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now you have another one that goes with this. Let me find that and pull it.
Vicky, can I ask a question about that
Yes.
last photo?
Yes.
Sorry, I sort of came in halfway to that. Why is that tree? Is that tree significant in any way in your area? Is it protected?
It's in Cremorne Point, and it's a local conservation area, and that's the council land. So they've got a house below it, but the change in elevation from the street to the bottom of the land is about 15 meters. And the people have been there 30 years, and you have to go about 100 meters down the street, through another entrance, down a path, past 4 houses, and then down all the stairs to their house. So they want to be able to live there long term, and it's getting too difficult now.
Right. All right. Cheers.
Yeah, yeah. But it's an interesting project. But I would love to get use the LiDAR and get all that done.
Yeah, we'd look forward to seeing.
Yeah, I spoke to a surveyor today, and he said, yeah, they got all the gear, they could do that.
Yep, look forward to seeing them. The
Yeah.
end result of that. Now, this is by the way, yes, all trees virtually in most local government areas in New South Wales are protected. And Ficus rubiginosus, people have. Some trees are more important than others. Some trees are less important than others. All trees are equal, but some are more equal than others. Isn't that what George Orwell said? So you end up with a situation where, something like a camphor laurel, well, it's really a weed species. We don't think that it's that important. Or you have something like ficus, and we say, we love ficus. They're a sacrosanct tree. So there is this process of people having emotional attachment to some species over another. And ficus is definitely one of those in the Sydney region. A strong social attachment to them. So we've got a Eucalyptus gleboidea with a stem wound on one side.
Yeah.
Some really good growth since it's been injured. Looks like at one stage it may have been 50%, and it's probably close enough to it at the moment, but it's
about 7 meters long, that wound.
Yeah, okay. Lots of growth out here, and this is our dead patch here. But it looks now like it'd be maybe even less than a third of the circumference.
Yeah, it is. It's less than a third. Yeah.
So if it's less than a third of the circumference, my view is don't worry about the wound. Hopefully one day it'll be a cavity. But Maddox's work shows us that a 1/3 cavity, well, that's not cavity yet, but a 1/3 cavity is not sufficient grounds to remove a tree.
Yeah, I think the circumference was 2.3 meters, and the base was 400 mil wide, I think, something like that.
Yeah. I'm happy enough with it as a tree. If that was completely hollowed out and it had, wall thickness of 35% of the radius, and it was a 1/3 opening, Maddox would walk past it.
Yeah.
So there's just nothing that says that we should be panicking about it, even though it looks odd. And during the first bout of the schools, I came across a Pterocornis that had a 50% opening, one long branch out one side, absolutely horrible looking tree. I gave it some thought, did some number crunching on it, and thought, if I just reduced that one limb, I'd be happy with a 50% opening on the tree. And if you use tree calc, and I know we pulled tree calc up on one of the vlogs a few months ago, 50% openings often don't lead to failure. It's hard, you lose half the tree, and then you get a hollow, and you can still have a perfectly sound tree. What Maddox's saying is that 1/3, we have to start thinking about it. And so tools like tree calc and Frank Rin's software are there to help you then consider it further. Maddox made very clear, and I think I mentioned before, I hopped on a plane and went over and saw him in Santa Monica and raised the issue of the difference between his calculations and Vesely's calculations. And when I sort of said, class, you've got 1/3 TR or 35% TR, and the tree gets removed. He said, I never said remove the tree. He said, that's when you have to start thinking. At less than that, you don't worry about it. And so this concept of, well, I've got a 65% cavity does not constitute to I've got to get rid of the tree. It means I need to think about it. That's the purpose of this body language. The body language is not remove, the body language is think. So, I've got a bird damage and cavity on a crimbia maculata, great adaptive growth. I'm comfortable. That's the end of it. I've thought. It doesn't mean get rid of. And I think I've showed you previously the trees around Middle Brother National Park where my kids are inside the hollow. There's 95% plus decay. There's 300 tons of solid wood above my kids, and I'm not trying to have them killed. It's just you realize that trees have got a lot more strength than we realize. And a part of that's the way they lay down their tissue. When they're young, the grain is often very vertical. As they get older, we start to get, movement in the grain, and we don't just get it move in one direction, we get it move backwards and forwards. So we create these wonderful plies that are incredibly rigid. I'll just see if I can show you one of those so you get an idea. Yeah, look at this. Look at what that grain is doing. It's gone in at least 3 distinct different directions. There, there, and there. That adds so much extra strength and stiffness. So when the tree's young, it's flexible. And it doesn't matter if it bends and moves a lot, because its purpose is to get to light and be dominant in the landscape. As it gets older, it needs to make itself more rigid. And so you get that as a repeating theme. And you can check this, take a piece of wood from the outside of a tree, piece of wood from the inside of the tree. The internal wood is more flexible than the external wood. Does that help?
Yes.
And you'll see this in nature constantly. It's a pretty nice example, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mark, what's going on in that photo, please? I'm looking on my phone and it's the size of my thumb, the picture. What's happening there?
The tree's dead and it started to decay, but as it's decayed, you see sections where the grain has changed directions. Let me see if I can know that I can make that any bigger for you. I can't, sorry.
No, that's all right. User error on my behalf. I should have put a computer home.
Yeah. So can you see the mouse at all?
Yep.
Okay, so that's wood grain growing in one direction. Then the wood has decayed. There's wood a little deeper growing in a different direction, going up and down. And here's a third direction that it's been growing even deeper down still. So you can see the direction of the grain has changed to make itself stronger. It does that constantly when it's injured as well. So injury results in this increase of strength. This is what's happening in that tissue either side of that maculata branch, Niels, that you showed us, where the cracks occurring on the side. This sort of material is happening. And so...
Sorry, go on.
Ask the question.
How big is that tree? How many years of growth are you saying?
This is probably a 400, 500 mil diameter tree.
Oh, okay.
As they get bigger, it can get even more extreme, and you can see some just amazing changes in patterns. I can show you another one. Just trying to think where quickly. Maybe, I know it's in Vietnam. Well, I hope I spelled it right.
Hey, Mark, isn't that also called a fiddleback, or is that something else?
Fiddleback is a part of the same sort of process. That's definitely the zoo in Vietnam, but it's I might have to go just to the date. March the 6th, 2018. So you can see when I'm on holidays, there's no such things as holidays. I'm always looking at what we're seeing. Okay. These are vessels. And you can see even those aren't all straight. These vessels are going in every which direction, which means our wood is going in every which direction. And this is just making it more rigid. That's all. I don't want to anthropomorphize the tree. I don't want to make it sound like it's thinking, but biochemically, it's processing what it's getting. And you can see, a recent vessel out here at that angle, another one at that angle, another one at that angle, and yet I've got the reverse happening. I've got them coming down here, straight down. I've got one that's going out at this angle here. We see wood and think, oh, it's just up and down. And it's hard to see when you're talking about trees with very small vessels, but eucalypts fortunately have big vessels. This is African mahogany almost certainly, and again, massive big vessels, very easy to see. And so when I saw it, I thought, oh, it's just too good not to see. And this is, again, just understanding things. This is a log. You can see the vessels, they're that big, for those of you who've got it on the screen. And this is callus and wound wood produced on the log itself. So it's been cut into pieces, and it still had enough sugars in the stem and enough parenchyma in the stem that it said, let me produce wound wood. And the reason it's able to do this is because the vascular tissue is going in every which direction. If it was just up and down, it wouldn't be able to do it. And those of you who've done an anatomy workshop with me hopefully understand that. Those of you who haven't, that might be getting a little bit complex, but it's the way that it is. And again, look what the vascular tissue is doing. It's not just straight up and down, it's going around, it's curving, and it's doing all sorts of wonderful things. So you can see this, by the way, if you want to look at brush box, Lophostomen convertus, you can see it from the outside in the smooth bark sections of the tree. You can see what the vascular alignment's doing, and they just form amazing patterns. In fact, I can probably pull vascular alignment because I think that's one of my search terms. It may not be, but it may be. Yeah, there we are. It is. So this realignment's due to pruning. So there's a tree that's been pruned. The bark's been taken off here to let it be more obvious. This is wound wood being produced over a stub. Look at that for strength. Okay, and so the tree gets an inclusion, it splits, and it hits something like this, and it just says, "I finished. Can't split any further," because that's just unsplittable. You have to something like that. You have to saw it. Even with an axe, it's not going to go. This is it around the vascular alignment around a cut, and so you can see why it's got to divide sideways. It's got to get the vascular tissue's got to get circumferential around the tree. Otherwise, it can't divide sideways. Can't divide up and down. Let me just pull you up a few more. Again, this is that suck experiment. Just something you've got to do. And I encourage you to use a whole pile of different species, but Metaceae great. Lophostomen convertus in spring and summer in good growing conditions. Just phenomenal plant. Again, you can see here that this is being subordinated out. Again, you learn a whole pile of things by getting that bark off and looking at things let me just get you, there's another shot there that I wanted to show you. That, by the way, pith is connected, that's codominant stem. So that's not a branch off the side, even though it might look like a branch. It's a codominant stem again. Boy, it doesn't look like a codominant stem, but that's why we find eucalypts hard to prune correctly. That's why we find ficus hard to prune correctly, because we get a lot of these codominant stems. Here we get the laying down of tissue, and Duncan Slater attempted to suggest that Shargo's modeling was wrong, and at one level it is, because it's not sheets of obvious tissue, it's cells, and because it's cells you can't see it when you examine it microscopically, but when you stain it you do see the distinct layering of the tissue, and it's layering at a cell or vessels at a time. And so you can't, a vessel's a vessel, you can't tell that they look different until you stain them up. And this again here, whilst it's not quite so obvious as it is, this is on a eucalypt. These are meristematic traces. If they had a leaf on them, they'd be called a leaf primordia and a meristematic bud. But you can see the tissue, you can see the vascular tissue is curving and turning around. And that's a eucalypt of some description. You see it on Lephostum, it's even more obvious. So I encourage you, just go find an older brush box that, you know, has got no bark at about a meter and a half. Have a look at it and you'll be absolutely gobsmacked at what it does. You know, our thoughts of it being just tissue with vascular tissue going straight up and down is just so erroneous. It's got it all figured out. You know, I'm not saying it's thinking, it's biochemical, I understand that, but in case you hadn't figured it out, thinking is biochemical, so I'm not so sure that we're necessarily smarter than trees. We think differently. We actually have a thinking process that's separate, but biochemically these guys are brilliant. And that's why they live, you know, multiples of our life expectancy when you think about it. So has that answered all those questions? Any other questions that we've got?
That was good, thank you.
Guys, hard to believe, but we've been at it for an hour and I'm happy because I figure that's fairly basic stuff. And I'd be happy to call it quits at this moment in time if you guys are happy with it. If you want to just do a few insects, I'm happy to do.
Sorry, Mark, I did send an email. I sent it to Peter. It was a growth at Amelia.
Oh, okay. Did you send it to Peter?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's hunting it for you now, and I'll have it in a few more minutes. So whilst he's doing that, I'm going to pull up a few insects for you.
It was a little while ago.
Double check that it's not in
I think
my.
I saw it in your inbox. Sorry, Mark.
It might already be in my inbox. So
Yes. The epicormic shoots off
That one there. Yeah.
was
Okay.
a little while.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, that's easy to do with, Andrew. That's great. I love it. This is Amelia Zeterak underneath, and you can see the nice big lenticels here on its epicormics.
Yep.
And this is privet, ligustrum.
Yeah.
And it's just simply growing in a cavity.
Yeah,
And
right.
it's filling itself up. Eventually, if all things go well, it will girdle itself and die. If that was my Melia, I like Melias. I think they're a great tree. And I think they're a great tree because I have one called Melia Zeterak Lady Gwenda that's named after my wife. It's a variegated form of white cedar. And so I have a soft spot for them. And I love the lilac flower and the scent at this time of the year. You know, it's not jacaranda, but it doesn't have the slip problems associated with jacaranda.
Yeah.
The one
there wasn't a cavity there. Sorry.
Sorry?
It just looked like there wasn't a cavity because I was looking for
Yeah. So it's snugged right in tight to a cavity.
Yeah.
And I think I showed you last week. So let me just duplicate this one. I might not have. If I go Mossman, trees are really good at being able to, well, plants are good at being able to occupy space. And here, and sorry for that, those of you who are on an iPhone, but this is a brick wall, this is an expansion joint, and this is woundwood creeping out between the expansion joint from a Chinese elm, Ulmus parvifolia. Okay. Once they are restricted and confined, they can do some pretty amazing things to function. And I just think, I'd love to take that home with me. I just see this little creature trying to sneak out between the brickwork. So interestingly, the wall's not damaged because lateral movement at this point between the two is limited. And eventually what we're going to get is dead tissue on either side in the expansion joint. At some stage or other, that may even die off at that stage. I think I'm going to hammer and chisel it out. I'd like the whole angle though. So it would be neat to have. And it's interesting. There's this expectation about how these things are going to work. And I'll just pull this one up. Wrong believe that's UK. So one drawback of Google is you've got to continually remind the photos that it's a suburb by telling it the state that it's in. But this is a heritage wall that's been knocked down. The footing's still in there. The footing's about 400 below ground. And you can see here on the back of the wall, this is all a fig root, all the way through here. One single fig root goes from the top down 400 mils. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Vicky. I can rotate it if it helps you, but that's how I think about it. Let me just rotate it one more time. And whilst that's working on it, and it will take a while, just in terms of the last few days, not very clear, I know. This is about 2 meters from a motel balcony. This is a hemiptera sitting away in a eucalyptus. This is a longicorn that somebody sent me from an acacia, and this is indeed acacia longicorn. It's a pretty distinct creature, and this is the one that causes the grief for acacia towards the end of their life. It bores in the trunk, usually somewhere between about 1.5 meters and downwards, and it chews downwards into the roots. Okay, so this is a unique little guy. This here is a wasp on a caterpillar, so it's doing some cleanup on the casuarina for us. I think that's pretty amazing that they can do that. We just forget about the balance of things, and those ones I showed you last time. Okay, is that better for you, Vicky? Sorry about that. I just took it that way. It's the way I think is in as far as possible now. I try and take almost all shots in landscape just because they work better in presentations. But you can see this is just solid root mass. So my suggestion to the client was we put a pier in here. That root's already been cut at that spot. A pier back this side, the bottom side. There was a proposal to have a pier here, and I said, hey, hang on, we can do better. And the response of the council was, are you going to need to cut roots? And I thought, boy, that was a silly question. Yes, because we're going to drill 5 450 millimeter diameter piers, and that's 240 millimeters there. So yes, I'm going to have one there, one up that end, one beside here, and it's just solid root mass all the way behind that wall. Why? Because the roots have hit the wall and been deflected. And they want to do what Peter's fig roots did. They would like to grow up and over, but they can't. They'd like to grow under, but when they grow down, they find there's another obstruction. That's the footing, the heel of the footing. So they do the next thing and run along the back of it with a hope. Now, here's what's fascinating. Had that wall stopped there, that fig root would have gone around and grown back this way and then continued on from here. And I'll challenge you, see who can find the name of the term that's used to describe that pattern in roots. A number of species of trees have this capacity to grow around and then continue growing as if the root hadn't met an obstacle. There is a technical name for it. I don't know what I can do to reward them, Peter. What can we do to reward them?
Give them a gold star.
Give them a gold star. Yeah, okay. I'll send them. I've got a little Shigo booklet. I'll send them a Shigo booklet.
I remember reading somewhere recently about tree root, and they were saying the research showed that the root actually started to deflect around the obstacle before it even got to it. I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, look, we had this view of trees that is somewhat correct, and that is they're simple organisms, but we lose the fact that biochemically they're a lot more complex than people. So their organs simple. That is, they don't have these complex organs like livers and kidneys, but biochemically, they're a lot more complex than people. So a typical thing like a poplar codes for 20 times more proteins than a human being. And that's why we talk about plants as a source of medicine, because they produce a lot of chemicals that we don't even know how to produce yet. So, you know, I don't want to say that it's analogous to thinking, because it's not, but it's not anything less significant than thinking in the way that they deal with things. And I just find that amazing. The fact that it'll grow around, and Peter talked about it. And I think, Peter, you've been and seen a situation with me in the Northern Rivers where a fig had grafted its roots back together after being cut.
Yeah.
You know, it knows where it needs to go geospatially. And that's a really weird thing for us to think about, that it's a biochemical knowledge, not a brain knowledge. But remember, the brain is just a biochemical organ, and that's it. So it really is different, but I mean, the Thai have a phrase for it. The Thai have got it down perfect. Same, but different. It really is amazing. So yes, in this situation here, again, Vicky, my suggestion was we cut the roots at the back here, remove the old footing out, and go back and start all over again. It's a 37-year-old Benjamina. It won't even miss a beat. You know, it might thin for 3 or 6 months, and then it'll be over. What's gone on is, instead of this being a $20,000 repair, this is now a $100,000 repair. And it's really required a lot of thinking of lots of parties to come together. In this case, the footing for the wall is above ground, supported on piers, and there'll be a faux wall, so little thin bits, 10-centimeter thick bits of brick to hide the fact that it's a footing. And on this side here, the footing will be above ground, 500 or 600 wide by 500 or 600 high, with constrictions around the roots. Just madness, because we can't cut roots. That's the belief. Or we don't want to cut roots. Or if we cut roots, the builder's going to do a crappy job of it and cause problems. And all of those have got some merit to it. But if they had lots of merit to it, we wouldn't be able to transplant trees. So the fact that we can transplant trees says that, you know, there's only some merit to it, not a lot of merit to it. Everyone happy with that, guys? Thanks for your time. And those of you who are coming to war, I'll see you next week. Otherwise, I'll see you in a month's time.